Welcome to Hazmat Theory Part 3, Driving and Parking Rules. Never park with Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 explosives within 5 feet of the traveled part of the road. Again, that's 5 feet. Except for short periods of time needed for vehicle operation necessities, such as fueling, do not park within 300 feet of a bridge, tunnel, or building, a place where people gather, or an open fire. If you must park to do your job, do so only briefly. Don't park on private property unless the owner is aware of the danger. Someone must always watch the parked vehicle. You may let someone else watch it for you only if your vehicle is on the shipper's property, on the carrier's property, or on the consignee's property. You may park a placarded vehicle not laden with explosives within 5 feet of the traveled part of the road only if your work requires it. You are allowed to leave your vehicle unattended in a safe haven. And a safe haven is very important, and that's why it's highlighted here. A safe haven is an approved place for parking unattended vehicles loaded with explosives. Designation of authorized safe havens is usually made by local authorities. So you would need to have the contact information of the local authorities in order to get that information when you map out your route. So you'll know the area you're going to be traveling in so that they can tell you the safe haven that is closest to that area. Attending parked vehicles. The person attending a parked vehicle must be in the vehicle awake and not in the sleeper berth or within 100 feet of the vehicle and have it within clear view. Be aware of the hazards of materials being transported and know what to do in an emergency. They must also be able to move the vehicle if needed. No flares. You might break down and have to use stopped vehicle signs. Use reflective triangles or red electric lights. Never use burning signals, such as flares or fuses, around a tank used for Class 3 flammable liquids or Division 2.1 flammable gas, whether loaded or empty. Keyword there is loaded or empty. And again, that comes back to the residue. Vehicle loaded with Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 explosives. Route restrictions. Some states and counties require permits to transport hazardous materials of waste. They may limit the routes you can use. Local rules about routes and permits change often. It is your job as the driver to find out if you need permits or must use special routes. Make sure you have all needed papers before starting your trip. If you work for a carrier, ask your dispatcher about route restrictions or permits. If you are an independent trucker and are planning a new route, check with state agencies where you plan to travel. Some localities prohibit transportation of hazardous materials through tunnels, over bridges, or other roadways. Always check before you start. Whenever placarded, avoid heavily populated areas, crowds, tunnels, narrow streets, and alleys. Take other routes, even if it's inconvenient, unless there is no other way. Never drive a placarded vehicle near open fires unless you can safely pass without stopping. In transporting Division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 explosives, you may have a written route plan and follow that plan. Carriers prepare the route plan in advance and give the driver a copy. You may plan the route yourself if you pick up the explosives at a location other than your employer's terminal. Write out a plan in advance. Keep a copy of it with you while transporting the explosives. Deliver shipments of explosives only, keyword only, to authorized persons or leave them in locked rooms designed for explosives. A carrier must choose the safest route to transport placarded radioactive materials. After choosing the route, the carrier must tell the driver about the radioactive materials and show the route plan. And of course, if you were able to be pulled over by DOT, they would expect to see the route plan. So it's not just, oh, it's in my mind or it's in my phone, but my phone is dead. You need to make sure that you have it in writing and that is there. This is the one time that modern technology, well, that's not, it doesn't, let me see. I think that some people may accept it in a phone environment, but ultimately it needs to be there with you in writing and with your regular hazardous material paperwork to make sure that you're protected in cases of being stopped. No smoking. Do not smoke within 25 feet of a placarded cargo tank used for Class 3 flammable liquids or Division 2.1 gases. Also, do not smoke or carry a lit cigarette, cigar, or pipe within 25 feet of any vehicle which contains Class 1 explosives, Class 3 flammable liquids, Class 4 flammable solids, Class 4.2 spontaneous combustibles. Again, remember that 25 feet. Refuel with engine off. Turn your engine off before fueling a motor vehicle containing hazardous materials. Someone must always be at the nozzle controlling fuel flow. So of course, me being old school and being in the trucking environment as long as I have been, that was a difficult thing for me to adjust to because for years the rule was once that vehicle starts, it basically does not cut off until you've completed your day. And the reason why is because a lot of old timers, which is who I was around then, raised me, always said, you never know when it's going to start back up and an engine can be fickle. So it very well may not crank back up, but that's a chance that you have to take when hauling hazmat material. So you should never fuel up with the engine off. Excuse me, never fuel up with the engine on. Ten VC fire extinguisher. The power unit of placarded vehicles must have a fire extinguisher with a UL rating of 10 VC or more. And I don't know if you recall, but when you were preparing for your general knowledge exam, you would have talked about fire extinguishers and the ratings. And no, you didn't have to memorize all of them, but you do need to know that you need the BC or more in order to haul hazmat. And again, of course, just in case, a little friendly reminder, if the fire extinguisher is not fully charged, if it's ever been used, if the pin is pulled out, it is of no use. So you must get a new one. It would be a terrible situation if you went to go put something out with an extinguisher that was previously used and, oh, I ran out. So it's very important to always get a new one if ever you have to ever use it, even if it's just like one pull and then the fire department shows up. You can't guess on how much is in that tank. Check tires. Make sure your tires are properly inflated. You must examine each tire on a motor vehicle at the beginning of each trip and each time the vehicle is parked. The only acceptable way to check tire pressure is using a tire pressure gauge. Again, that goes to my bad habits because I'll take a hammer, bang, bang. It sounds good. But when you're hauling hazmat, you have to be 100% sure. So please use a tire gauge. Do not drive with a tire that is leaking or flat, except to the nearest safe place to fix it. Remove any overheated tires. Place it a safe distance from your vehicle. Don't drive until you correct the issue of the overheating. Remember to follow the rules about parking and attending placarded vehicles. They apply even when checking, repairing, or replacing tires. Where to keep shipping papers and emergency response information. A carrier must give each transporting division 1.1, 1.2, or 1.3 explosives a copy of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. The carrier must also give written instructions on what to do if delayed or in an accident. The written instructions must include the names and telephone numbers of the people to contact, including carrier agents or shippers, the nature of the explosives transported, the precautions to take in emergencies, such as fires, accidents, or leaks. Drivers must sign a receipt for these documents. You must be familiar with and have in your possession while driving the shipping papers, written emergency instructions, and a written route plan. Keyword written. I know that these books may be a little old, but written is still basically the same, the rule. That's one thing that hasn't really changed. Equipment for chlorine. A driver transporting chlorine in cargo tanks must have an approved gas mask in the vehicle. The driver must also have an emergency kit for controlling leaks and dome cover plate fittings on the cargo tank. Railroad crossings. Stop before railroad crossings if your vehicle is placarded, carries any amount of chlorine, has cargo tanks, whether loaded or empty, for hazardous materials. You must stop 15 to 50 feet before the nearest rail. Proceed only when you are sure no train is coming and you can clear the tracks without stopping. Don't shift gears while crossing the tracks. And of course, with the 15 to 50 feet, the first line that you'll normally see, the markings on the ground, will be that 15 feet. The next line that you see after the X and the railroad, the R&R for the railroad sign, will be 50 feet. So if you stop right outside of the 50 feet, like right before you get to the 50 feet line, then because there were cars in front of you or another truck or bus was in front of you and they stopped, when you pull off, you have to stop again because you did not stop within the 15 to 50 feet. And I always suggest that the music is off, the heat, anything that will distract your sound, your ability to hear is off. So turn the heat off, turn the music off, turn the radio down, the CB down, and crack the windows. Crack the windows so you can make sure that you hear. Because of course we know that in a lot of areas, trains don't have horns. So you're depending on and it may not have it may not be a manned railroad crossing where there's someone or a gate. So you need to make sure that you are 100% sure that there's nothing coming in either direction. And again, I don't know if you recall, but it takes 14 seconds for a tractor trailer to clear a single track and 15 seconds for a tractor trailer to clear a double track. So keep the time that you require to cross that, to clear that track in mind when you decide to proceed. And it's always good to look both ways and then look the way that's closest to you a second time. So it's right, left, right normally. And you can say in that time, I hear no train, I see no train. And also once you clear the track, you should leave your hazards on for at least 15 seconds after crossing. Hazardous material emergencies. Of course, we've already spoke about the ERG book that I mentioned to mention a couple of lessons earlier. But again, if you do not, I mean, if you're not given one by your shipper or carrier, be sure to venture out and get yourself one on your own and keep it with you just in case. You never know, especially in a fleet environment. One day you come to your truck and things are there, and the next day you come to your truck and things aren't there. So it's best to have your own copy. Crashes and incidents. As a professional driver, your job at the scene of the crash or incident is to keep people away from the scene. Limit the spread of material only if you can safely do so. Communicate the danger of the hazardous material to emergency response personnel. Provide emergency responders with the shipping papers and emergency response information. Follow this checklist. Check to see that your driving partner is okay. Keep shipping papers with you. Keep shipping papers, I'm sorry, keep people far away and upwind. Warn others of the danger. Call for help. Follow your employer's instructions. Fires. You might have to control minor truck fires on the road. However, unless you have the training and equipment to do so safely, don't fight hazardous material fires. Dealing with hazardous material fires requires special training and protective gear. When you discover a fire, call for help. You may use the fire extinguisher to keep minor truck fires from spreading to cargo before firefighters arrive. Feel trailer doors to see if they are hot before opening them. If hot, you may have a cargo fire and should not open the doors. Opening doors will allow the air in and make the fire flare up. Without air, many fires only smolder until the firemen arrive, doing less damage. If your cargo is already on fire, it is not safe to fight the fire. Keep the shipping papers with you to give to emergency personnel as soon as they arrive so that they can know how to address the material that is burning. If you discover a cargo leak, identify the hazardous materials leaking, but by using shipping papers, labels, or package location. Do not touch any leaking material. Many people injure themselves by touching hazardous materials. Do not try to identify the material or find the source of the leak by smelling. And of course, this could injure or kill you, even if you don't smell anything. Never eat, drink, or smoke around a leak or spill. If hazardous materials are spilling from your vehicle, do not move it any more than safety requires. You may move off the road and away from places where people gather if doing so serves safety. Only move your vehicle if you can do so without danger to yourself or others. Never continue driving with hazardous materials leaking from your vehicle in order to find a phone booth, truck stop, help, or similar reason. Remember, the carrier pays for cleanup and contamination parking lots, roadways, and drainage ditches. If hazardous materials are spilling from your vehicle, you should park it, secure the area, stay there, send someone else, keyword else, for help to be sure they and be sure they know the following: your exact location and direction of travel, a description of the emergency, your name, the carrier's name, and the name of the community or city where your terminal is located, the proper shipping name, hazard class, and identification number of the hazardous materials if you know them. All of this information is a lot, especially in a time of an incident or an emergency. So it'll probably be in your best interest to just text it, take a picture of the information, put it in their notes or something, because the last thing you want them to do is to go get help and they don't bring the help that you need. So always keep that in mind. Required notifications. The National Response Center is a organization that will help in times of your need and when you've been in an incident or accident. I suggest that you put the number for the National Response Center in your phone, as well as the Kim track number in your phone as well. These two numbers may prove to be needed in a time of an emergency, and although you will be able to locate them in various other places, it's best that you have them on hand when you really need them. You will need to give them information like your name, the name and address of the carrier that you're working for, the extent of injuries, if any, classifications, name and quantity of hazardous materials involved, type of incidents, whether a continuing danger to life exists at the scene, if a reportable quantity of hazardous substances were involved, the caller should give the name of the shipper and quantity of the hazardous substances discharged. Carriers must make detailed written reports within 30 days of an incident. Chemtrack and the National Response Center are closely associated. So if you were to report something to the National Response Center, they would share that information with Chemtrack. Chemtrack is open 24 hours. They have a toll-free number. It was created to provide emergency personnel with technical information about the physical properties of hazardous materials, and that will help assist them in how to um, safely put the fire or secure the area in the times of an emergency. Okay. Now, please answer the questions below and send your responses via email. This concludes part 3 of your Hazmat Theory class.